Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are, and other generic webinar greetings. I am Ryan Schwartz. Welcome to today's webinar, Analyst and Customer Perspectives on Email and Collaboration Security. This will be in more of a fireside chat format, so it should be a pretty exciting conversation we'll be having here because I am joined by two amazing guests. I'll let them introduce themselves, but I have Jess Byrne and Tiago D'Angelo with me. Jess, if you want to kick off intros here.
Sure. Hi, and thanks for having me. I'm Jess Byrne. I'm a principal analyst on the security and risk team at Forrester Research, and one of my coverage areas happens to be email messaging and collaboration security, amongst other things. I also write for the role of the CISO with a particular focus on security talent management, and I cover incident response and crisis management. And believe it or not, all these things are very closely tied together. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then Tiago, over to you.
Awesome. Tiago D'Angelo speaking. So, the Global Enterprise AI and Cybersecurity Architect. You guys might be asking AI and cybersecurity. Here, pretty much the same kind of level of action. So, we are involved with pretty much every single one of those initiatives. Been with Dexter for a while. Have also worked for other companies, including Microsoft. And I'm here, and it's been amazing. Tons of challenges. Never a boring day.
Fantastic. No, thanks for joining us as well. And then I'm Ryan Schwartz. I'm Senior Manager of Product Marketing here at Adam Normal. I will be the moderator for today because I have the least interesting opinions of the three people on the call. But we'll be covering a few things. So we'll be starting the conversation to go over the agenda quickly with Jess and talking a little bit about the evolving email security market, especially in a post Forrester Wave world here. And then we will talk a bit about what makes a leader, talking to Tiago as a valued abnormal customer. And then we'll close out with some closing thoughts on the road ahead for email security. So with that, let's dive into part one, the evolving email security market. So Jess, first questions to you. Again, thank you for being here. You've been covering this market for quite some time. We've worked together quite a bit. We've spoken, and your opinions are always fantastic when it comes to email security. In the latest wave, it has a new name, right? Email messaging and collaboration. Can you talk a bit about why that name change was necessary and what it really signals as this market and threat landscape evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but I really strongly believe that the holistic approach of email messaging and collaboration security is a reflection not only of the way that people are working now, but of the threats that are facing those workers as they communicate and collaborate with their customers, with partners, and with each other. So attackers are shifting their focus to other entry points besides the inbox, leveraging things in a very targeted multi-step campaign sort of way to include things like voice and text, exploiting SaaS applications or internal messaging apps and collaboration tools, and even things like file sharing environments. So these avenues are what we use every day. They're vital for workflows, but they're also really vulnerable to malicious activities. So as a result, organizations, and I've been beating this drum since the last wave, but again, changing the name is me placing more emphasis on it. Organizations really have to adopt a more holistic approach to securing their workforce and securing all the people, like the partners and customers as well. So they have to ensure that the tools and the environments receive the same level of protection as the inbox. So email messaging and collaboration security has to protect employees from harmful messages and deliver also really timely awareness and training prompts to encourage vigilance and safe data practices. So again, my opinion is that enterprise email security, which was the name of the last wave, is no longer reflective of the capabilities vendors in this space now offer. And if they don't already offer it, they should be, right? In varying capacities, many folks offer this, but this is also what the wave evaluation is about. So this is where I think, not to, not to toot my own horn, but this is where I think Forrester's showing more vision in the industry, if I do say so myself. So yeah, that's the name change for you.
No, I think it makes sense, right? There's so many different entry points and so many different things that a human on a daily basis is interacting with at an organization. So it's looking holistically at everywhere that an attacker can interact. So going to my next question here, another key theme that we've seen in the wave that you had just released was that deployment methods ultimately matter less and less, right? So for years, the market was dominated by secure email gateways. Can you explain to us why the recent recently the focus has kind of shifted away from deployment methods and towards other criteria like effective detection and AI explainability.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I continue to hear from Forrester clients, and I have a lot of conversations, this is my number one area of inbound questions that come from Forrester clients, is around email messaging and collaboration security. And what I hear on almost all of the customer reference calls for the Wave and those inbound questions that come from our clients is that too many malicious emails were getting through to end users. If that organization had really just one layer of protection, usually that means the native security capabilities of the major email and collaboration infrastructure providers, but sometimes it's a legacy secure email gateway. What clients are looking for are outcomes. And this is what I care about too, not specific deployment options. They want a solution that reduces the number of malicious emails reaching their end users, right? So it became moot to me how you did it, but how you can prove, efficacy and usability for those customers, right? I- There's a lot of marketing spin about efficacy out there, and a lot of third-party studies that tout 99.999, percent of malicious emails are blocked by this tool or that tool. And what I always tell clients, and I think this is really, really important when they're selecting or renewing with a vendor in this space, is the only outcomes that matter are your own, right? So efficacy data should be from your own environment, not independent third parties. And I know POC processes can take a while, but I really do think it's worth it, right? Use that data along with other POC feedback from your team on usability, AI explainability, customer support, integrations, and telemetry sharing to make that switch or to add another layer of protection, and make a business case for the budget to do that. Right. And if you're faced with really tough tech consolidation choices, you should be working with a partner that's going to help you make that business case. And in many ways, it's that real data from your real enterprise configured exactly, as you have it. So that's why I really am much more focused now on outcomes, and less about, I think people kind of get bogged down in the deployment options. You really are looking for what's going to protect your organization the most.
Absolutely. No, appreciate the answer. And just as a side advertisement at Abnormal, we do provide a very easy POV process. So, well, POC, we call it POV process to see exactly what, is happening in your environment. So for
Mhm.
those out there that are interested, we can help you with that. So that is a great segue into the next section to talk to Tiago a bit. So thank you, Jess. We'll come back to you towards the end here, but moving into what makes a collaboration and email security leader. So Tiago, again, thank you for joining us, but also thank you for being an Abnormal customer. I believe you were also one of the reference customers during the evaluation process, so thank you for that as well. From a customer's perspective, before you found Abnormal, what were the specific challenges you were facing, and what kind of attacks were getting through? And ultimately, how did that impact your security team? I know it was a multi-part question, and that's usually not the best thing for an interview, but figured I'd pose it all to you at once.
No, that's actually a perfect question. So, and to build upon what Jess said, um, the range of attacks that we were observing, right? So when we were looking for a new solution, it was from the most simplistic ones to the most sophisticated ones. So we were in a very like a battle, and it was a lot like a losing battle from our side because we could not keep up with the number of messages coming through the SAG, and we did everything that we could. So it would be like nested URLs, like basic phishing, basic like social engineered messages laced with sometimes like with nested malicious links. Like the first one doesn't take you to the malicious link. The second one is going to take you using some of like social engineered like laced messages, like a fake website up, like 24 hours old website. And we were going through that. It was a battle. We had a high volume of messages reaching the users. That was absolutely not acceptable. It's not acceptable for us. We had cases where we were trying to reverse engineer attacks and find root causes, and at the same time getting hit again, the same users. So that was a very, very we saw as a very real challenge that the tools that we had, right, were not capable of actually stepping up to the plate and defeating those cyber threat actors. And it was we also saw how much like how like targeted Dexco was at that point. So we were always in the news. We're like buying companies. We grew so much through M&A. It was absolutely insane. So we're always like LinkedIn, like articles and news making comments about us. So of course, that is another very interesting opportunity for cyber threat actors to interject themselves into these processes, right? Because we don't know these new companies. They have all their names on LinkedIn. They have to just, all they got to do is scrape that information out of LinkedIn and just create their social engineer campaigns, to hit some of our users. And when you are going through the process of M&A, it's very critical because you're also acquiring technical debt, right? So we also saw how the companies that we were buying were getting targeted as well. So that was kind of like the landscape that we find ourselves. And then I went into R&D mode to find something better to help us to counterattack those.
Appreciate you sharing that. And what's interesting is obviously that's unique to Dexco in terms of the scope of what you were facing. But I feel like a lot of organizations and folks that are out there in the audience can probably relate to a lot of some of those challenges too. So moving into the next question here, then I'm curious, when you were evaluating solutions, the latest Forrester Wave, for instance, highlights how important AI and an API, approach can be. What was it about Abnormal's approach specifically, and our use of AI and the integration process that really stood out to you, and what kind of value and impact have you seen since deploying?
So our SAG solution back then was heavily based on static policies. So thresholds that needed to be kept, like fine-tuned and tweaked all the time. And I tried everything that I could working with the vendors to get it right. It was never actually capable of keeping up with the attacks. So when we found Abnormal AI, we noticed a change in the approach. Instead of like static like policies that needs to be taken care of, like we kind of babysit those policies, and you have a lot of like administration work around it. The behavioral approach, behavior analysis, right? That the AI-driven like methodology that Abnormal uses made the difference, and it was a huge contrast because we saw, like, first of all, I didn't find any policies to tweak. That was one of the biggest shifts. And then when we saw that clicked. I'm like, okay, this is what we need, because attackers are using AI. We have to fight fire with fire. We have to step up the game at their levels, right? And fight AI against AI with AI. Like, so that was the biggest like contrast that we saw. And also, of course, like my team is very lean. So we're very lean in terms of the cybersecurity team here. So that was also a huge deal for us, because you don't need to have as many people to keep the solution running, right? So definitely the behavioral approach, AI-driven methodologies, the natural language processing, being able to understand tone, like financial fraud languages. We did not have those capabilities before. We were very like based on policies looking for malicious links or reputational IP addresses, and look up like URLs and understanding and detonating those into sandboxes based on signatures. And although our SAG solution back then had some AI, but it was not up to the levels that we needed to be. So that was one of the first things that we saw. And also, I wanted to make a comment about the POV. That was the biggest kind of a game changer for us, because it took us literally 25 minutes to set it up. And we waited like a couple of hours, and we start seeing the results side by side with the SAG detections. And then the contrast became evident that that's what we needed, the change that approach that I was saying, like static policies, a lot of babysitting, a lot of administration tasks around, a lot of people watching this and not being able to keep up with the attackers, shifting to a more strategic, proactive way, methodology, using AI and like not depending on static policies anymore, but learning as we go. Because also I like how the tool was learning our footprint, what type of attacks we're getting, like understanding conversations that we have with the users, understanding like if someone could be interjecting themselves into those conversations. Like vendor fraud is one of the huge points for us as well, because we caught tons of attacks where vendors of ours got compromised and attackers interjected themselves into those conversations, and we were able to catch it as well.
Yeah, and I think your point there of growing with your kind of with Dexco and understanding the behavior in an organization is a critical piece to how we differentiate ourselves as well, right? It's not about static rules. It's not about knowing what's bad. It's about knowing what's good and what's normal, and then finding those deviations, because the outcome is ultimately, when something deviates enough from typical behavior, that might not be something you could have ever written a rule about, because you wouldn't have known about it otherwise. So that segues nicely into the last one. You said you made this exact point that's on the slide here and in this quote about using AI to fight AI. So perfect way to get into this, this last question here. So I will start with you, Tiago, to give Jess the last word. As we look ahead, attackers are increasingly leveraging generative AI themselves, right? They're creating sophisticated and personalized attacks. You really went into depth about some of the threats and the threat landscape that you've seen at Dexco. What's the one thing that both security vendors and customers need to be doing to stay ahead of this new threat landscape? If people came away with one best practice, what piece of advice would you give?
I would say nowadays, go agentic. Agentic AI is big. We're shifting from large language models to small language models right now, right? So why? Because we need to be more specific, more specialized. So we're leveraging some of these agents. For example, we use those agents to answer those some of our users' inquiries, like when it comes like, okay, is this good? I just reported it. And we do have the agent on the abnormal side that actually replies to those users and help them to understand, yeah, you did it right. Okay, we analyzed this and this is actually very bad. Thank you very much for reporting, right? And I feel like this is what's happening right now, this shifting to a more like strategic, localized, highly specialized, agent-driven AI approach. For protection, we have a heavy initiative here internally on the cybersecurity side. We currently have 4 active agents that are performing basically FTE operations for us, right? And I feel like that is also the approach that attackers are going to take. Becoming smarter and is the escalation game, right? So, and I feel like that's reaction speed wise, having agents working for you and doing those things at the machine speed, it's going to help us to have an advantage over cyber threat actors. The AI doesn't sleep, doesn't do anything, just works, right? So it doesn't need to, we need to get more involvement in terms of how we can leverage that to the good, because we know the bad, there's a lot of bad agents out there. We need more good agents on the counter attack side. So that would be my advice, and this is where we're going to in terms of cybersecurity.
No, it's a really great point, and I think it dovetails with what you were saying about having kind of a lean team as well, because I think that's also something that folks can relate to, right? The cybersecurity skills gap. I've been in the industry for about a decade now, and it's come up every year like clockwork. As attacks evolve, as the threat landscape evolves, there are never enough skilled folks to keep up. So, I appreciate you sharing that insight. But Jess, over to you. Same question. What would you say to vendors and customers?
Yes, I'm going to say many things. So first, we'll start with yes, and Tiago made this point. Like Gen AI is helping bad actors overcome language and grammar barriers to create these really compelling messages, but they're also using Gen AI and soon agentic, right? It'll make it even faster for intelligence gathering to gain credibility. Like and in an instant, Gen AI delivers company, function, role, individual details, possibly including writing style, voice, video, stolen credentials, to convince targets to take specific actions. So understanding that attackers are spending time profiling and targeting your workforce is important. And please don't think you're too small a firm or in an industry they don't care about, because AI is making it too quick and too easy for them not to take their shot. Right? They're gonna try. There's still a spray and pray approach, but it's much more targeted and strategic thanks to AI making it quick. On the bright side, though, using AI to fight AI is a really big benefit to using an email messaging and collaboration solution, as these models are able to quickly spot anomalies in external and internal communication and flag signs of social engineering, because it ultimately still comes down to very typical tells, right? There's usually a call to action, there's usually authority, there's usually novelty, there's usually urgency to it. But understanding which of these AI models hit and why for each alert is really necessary to help security analysts make more informed decisions, right? They're still doing a lot of triage work, at least for the moment. Um, it's going to help them fine tune security policies and better communicate with end users, right? And you can use AI also to speed up those processes as well, especially the close the loop processes with people that are submitting suspicious emails. Um, it's interesting when I was doing the wave when customer references noted when the use of AI in a solution, when they said, well, I don't know, it's a secret sauce or a black box, that didn't go over well with me, right? I think AI explainability is incredibly important because you're going to have people with all different sorts of skill sets. And yes, there are skills gaps that are needing to rely on the information that is coming from these AI models to make decisions. And then again, back to the targeted messaging, one of the best ways to start with your own end users is with communication, right? Given all of these social engineering attempts that we've seen that are successful, right? The scattered spider types with these targeted multi-pronged campaigns using voice, text, email, and even deepfake audio and video, it's really important that your workforce knows how your HR, IT, security, marketing, facilities, executives, how all of these folks will and will not communicate with them, right? They need to understand truly that the CEO is never going to text them and ask them to do something real quick for them. Like there's things like this that's a process and a communication thing. So they need to know, the IT help desk isn't going to call them out of the blue and do a reset on their account or machine. So putting policies in place, and putting communication in place is really important. Um, and I think it's really important to just think, maybe even take a cue from retail banks and how they communicate to consumers, right? How to avoid scams or social engineering. And it really just can't be a once a year video, right? These things have to be coming at them at a regular clip, not only through the email messaging and collaboration security solutions, but through their own people, through the security team, through corporate, communications. So there's a lot of ways to tackle this, but I think you've got to do it both from a technology and a process and communication perspective.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of advice.
It was a lot.
No, it's great. I definitely want to unpack a couple of things you said too, because I think there's some interesting points from the abnormal side as well, which is, first and foremost, I completely agree with you. And the last thing you said about it can't just be a once a year video anymore. Security needs to be threaded into the day to day for every employee, right? And it's one of the reasons that we've moved into the human risk management space as well with AI Phishing Coach, for instance, and trying to empower people with the real attacks they might actually be facing and ensure people are effectively trained on the things that they're more likely to see and engage with, because that's going to, defeat just sending them a template and hoping it's the right thing to send any day of the week. I think another thing you said is the explainability piece. And I can say from the abnormal side too, we really value making sure that when we do any sort of detection, whether it's email or account compromise, that we're really highlighting how that decision was made by the AI, because it does help to, prove out that it's not just a black box. It is, doing something. It is doing detection. It is learning. And that is the hardest thing in an AI world, right? To show that it's actually doing something rather than, if you can't see an immediate output. But no one wants to hear me talk, so I'll stop pontificating here. But I will go into the closing here, because we're coming up on the half hour. But I really appreciate both of you hopping on. Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you, Tiago. I know the last question was about any advice you have, but if there's like a closing one sentence either of you wanted to give, please feel free. Tiago, I'll throw it back to you. I know that wasn't what we had talked about, but I always like to leave with a stinger if you have something. So Tiago, if there's anything else you wanted to add real quick.
Yeah, I would just like to say it's been quite a journey with Abnormal growing with the solution. I feel like this business partnership is the key, because we become safer and you guys become better. So it's been amazing journey, and I would say also POV is the key. If you're on the fence, POV it. That's it. That's what we did, because we needed results. And one of the things that Jess said in the beginning, that's true. Like at the end of the day, what you want is less malicious emails reaching our users, because users you do work on a lot of like user awareness, right? But there's always someone that's going to fall for it, right? So we do want less emails coming through. That's it, right? And if you go through the POV process, it's very simple. It's like an API integration. You can run side by side with your SAG or any other solution, and you can see exactly what you're stopping out with the new approach, methodology driven by AI and behavioral analytics versus your static, like bloated, static policies based approach. Do that. That's going to speak for itself. That's what everybody that I talk to about, even like friends in the industry, and they ask what I'm doing in terms of security for emails. I say, Abnormal AI, go check them out, get a POV on. That's it. You're going to see the results. So I would say just do that. It speaks for itself. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I truly appreciate it. It was amazing. And yeah, awesome.
Thank you for the partnership. And then Jess, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to reiterate that point about the only data that matters is your own when it comes to efficacy. Really, truly, like, there's a lot out there that people are just putting out there that is just sort of perfect lab environment. And that's not your enterprise, right? You've got legacy technology, you've got layers upon layers, you've got, M&A coming in and complicating things, or you have a complex environment. So put it in, do the POV in your exact environment, do a bake off, whatever you need to do, get that data to get your budget. And then, really the other thing that I really want people to do is have your analyst, whoever's going to be using this day to day to do investigations, to do triage, to do follow-up, have them take it for a spin and get their opinion. Is this usable? Are all the alerts explainable? Does this work with your workflows? Great. That has to matter too, because they're the ones that are going to be using it every day. So the data and the AX, we call it analyst experience, really does matter.
Thank you, Jess. Well, with that, again, thank you both. Really appreciate the perspectives today. To the audience joining us, if you'd like to learn more, there should be an email going out with a replay link here if there's anyone else you think would get some value out of this webinar. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.